As the passing day resides into night, a cold and dark presence overwhelms the land. Looming in the midnight, shadowing the dead ground below, is the accursed castle of Nosferatu. Ancient in history, deadly in the present, this remnant of times past has gripped the land with death and terror. Nosferatu, creature of night, a name feared by all. His reign of terror stretches across the land with unspeakable horrors. Those few who have seen him dare not speak his name. Those unfortunate to meet him have never been seen again. Only one races to end the terror. Only one with the courage of many takes to arms to rid the land of Nosferatu. Kyle, driven by his quest, races to save his fair maiden taken by Nosferatu. Time is a factor as he draws closer to the castle. Many obstacles lay ahead, but Kyle has no remorse for those in his path. An army of darkness awaits. Kyle's quest will be long and hard.
Well, an army of darkness, you say? Does that come with a fistful of boomstick? Okay, hold on. Wait. We're doing rim shots now? Really? That's what we've come. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I don't care. We're moving on, right? So what I just read was the paper-thin premise behind Sega's vampire-killing epic Nosferatu, released for the Super Nintendo in 1995. And despite the game's dark gothic atmosphere and potentially horrific subject matter, this game was rated kids to adults, which is otherwise known today as rated E for everyone. And that's why there's not a pint of blood to be found anywhere in this game. So you assume the role of Kyle, who has taken it upon himself to fight off the evil forces of that blood-sucking fiend Nosferatu, who not only chose to look more like a Count Dracula type rather than his own namesake, but has committed the ungodly sin of kidnapping your girl and keeping her imprisoned so that you could save her, rather than, eating her and drinking her blood or something. I don't know. In order to accomplish this task, Kyle must traverse through 6 stages of spooky buildings and blood-boiling terrors, with nothing but his bare fists to tackle the undead. And look, that kills any seriousness this game might have employed. You have a dark, unsettling world, moody, temperamental music and ambiance that adds tension, and then you have some jabroni punching the crap out of a werewolf, and it's absolutely tremendous. Can anyone explain to me why this isn't a franchise? So Nosferatu is a side-scrolling action-adventure game that's more akin to games like Flashback or the old Prince of Persia games from way back when. Less of a straight-up fast-paced action platformer, and more slower-paced and methodical where you're grabbing onto ledges to reach higher platforms, finding items in chests, pushing blocks or switches to unveil something new in a level. Try not to fall from great heights because that will kill you and you only have one life. But you do have unlimited continues, except not really. See, the game has 2 endings, a good ending and a bad ending. What determines the ending is how many continues you use. I've heard after 7 or 8 continues is when you start getting the bad ending, and the best way to tell is by looking at the photograph of Kyle and his girl. Once a pair of fangs form on that lovely smile, the battle is lost, and the vampire has fed on her blood. It's a nice subtle detail you probably would have missed the first time out, but is an early hint that you're already too late. So a game like this, Nosferatu, is a game knowing where to go, what to do, timing your moves and your jumps so you don't foul up and head on to an early demise. And an early demise is what you can expect for the most part, because Nosferatu is ball-bustingly difficult to an almost torturous level. If it isn't having to deal with traps or deadly gimmicks, it's putting up with the poor fighting mechanics that comprise punches, kicks, a jump kick, and even a shoulder tackle sort of move. Part of the problem is that Nosferatu wants to be this sort of flashback Prince of Persia style cinematic platformer thing. That somewhat slow, methodical style of play where every move is deliberate and calculated. Your hero has a movement mode for movement and a fighting mode for fighting. You can push objects, hang onto ledges, and raid chests for crystals, which can either heal you, extend your life, or increase your fighting capabilities with power crystals that you could collect up to 9, but also lose by running into walls and stuff. That's all well and good, but the problem boils down to somewhat unresponsive controls, which we'll touch on right now actually. Control is fairly simple and straightforward. The B button attacks and the A button jumps. And that's it. There's button customization, so you could change those 2 buttons to any buttons on the D-pad or whatever the case may be, but that's all you have is a jump button and an attack button. And using attack with the D-pad can produce a number of other attacks, in theory at least. The problem with the controls, they tend to be unresponsive under the best of times. Trying to double tap a direction in order to break into a run for leaps, and especially for slides where you gotta roll your thumb downwards like a reverse circle movement, only works some of the time, and this is not a good sign for a game of this ilk where you need good solid controls to perform some maneuvers that could determine your fate. The fighting mechanics are somewhat flawed, hampered by rather terrible collision detection, blows that should land don't, and blows that shouldn't do. More often than not, poor collision issues and unresponsive controls are the main culprits of what could have been a superb title. There is a definite learning curve in terms of certain moves like the slide or even just latching onto ledges, which also tend to have spotty collision detection. But once you learn all the nuances, you should have a fighting chance to progress in Nosferatu. A less than slim chance with less than responsive controls and unreliable collision detection, but a chance regardless. Nosferatu boasts 6 stages spanning multiple segments, and continuing after dying only sets you back to the beginning of the current segment. Though Nosferatu features no password or save feature, it does have a level select code that I'm not going to give you. Nope. Now, the one thing I will praise Nosferatu on are the cinematics in between stages, which are really well done. They're appropriately moody, the relatively simple animations are smooth, the presentation is top-notch when it comes to these relatively simple intermissions, but they do a good job of setting the mood of the game. In terms of cinematics on the Super Nintendo, none that I've played have matched the quality of the pixel work in these cutscenes. These are just fantastic. Now, the in-game stuff, on the other hand, is nowhere near as high-quality art, but it looks fine. The various characters are rather well animated for the most part and look fairly decent if nothing else. The various locales are highly detailed gothic stuff with a suitably muted yet monotonous color scheme. I suppose a drawback is that there is a distinct lack of visual variety, as a lot of the interior halls look fairly similar to each other, despite the fact that you're traveling between different mansions and whatever they're called. Other than that though, it's a fine looking game. The soundtrack I find is a bit of a mixed bag. For the most part, you have appropriately unsettling moody music that is complementary to the environment you're in, and this sort of chaotic ambiance that I actually admire to a degree. But sometimes you'll get something somewhat upbeat compared to everything else, and it's meh. Sound effects are stock stuff for the most part, some punchy sounds, some growls, some grunts, some moving objects. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing really special, but at the same time nothing that is really out of place for a game like this. Nosferatu is a game that had the potential to be a really good gothic-themed Prince of Persia style platformer with its moody atmosphere and unique combat, but it's ultimately marred by the 2-hit combo of unresponsive controls and spotty collision detection. If you enjoy this sort of platformer and are willing to forgive the game's flaws, there is a good time to be had with Nosferatu. But it is definitely a mileage-varying game even under the best of circumstances, and is not for the faint of heart. And that's why this is not a franchise.
You win!